Witch in Charm's Way, a cozy mystery audiobook, written and narrated by R.K. Dreaming. Part 27. Chapter 15, Sugar Daddy. I looked at the dead guy beneath the concrete in astonishment. "Wowzers, trousers," I said. Jasper looked at me in concern. "What?" I shrugged. I was saying any old thing that came off the top of my head, and I couldn't seem to stop it. "You heard me," I said. Allegra grabbed me and hurried me away from the gap in the concrete, wanting to get us away from our gruesome discovery. We went to the shallower end of the pool, where we could more easily climb out. Captain Villain needed no such help. He leapt out of the pool with a single bound. "Gotta love ya and leave ya," he said, heading off into the night. "Hey, wait!" I called. I didn't know why, I just didn't want him to leave yet. He obviously didn't feel the same, because he disappeared into the blackness of the night, leaping off the club's rooftop to what I hoped was another one below. "Be careful!" I yelled after him. He did not reply. "Who do you think he is?" said Allegra in a shaky voice behind me. She was looking back at the shattered gap in the concrete that her wand had made. I shrugged. "You guys are more likely to know than me. I hardly know anyone I see in this town anymore. All the faces are different. I suppose they've all grown up." I shut my mouth. This urge to babble was going to make me say things that I shouldn't say. Jasper shook his head. He didn't know the guy either. "We'd better call Chief Hardwick," said Jasper. Allegra and I made a face. As Jasper made the phone call, the three of us headed back to the doorway and loitered there, waiting. Allegra and I had a quick chat and agreed it was not a good idea to alert the club staff to our grisly discovery. After all, if someone here had something to do with this, then we didn't want to give them an opportunity to hide anything. Jasper finished his phone call. "Chief Hardwick is going to send someone over," he said. "I wish it were Chief Rain," I muttered. "Hardwick is going to chew us out for being here in the first place." "It's weird, isn't it?" Allegra said. "We came here to find a clue about Lily, and we found this instead." "Maybe it is a clue," I said. "I mean, what are the chances there's not a link between these two things?" "Or he got blackout drunk and fell into the wet concrete," said Jasper, frowning at the pool. "It's not like they even put any safety barriers up. This door isn't even locked." Allegra winced. "Gosh, that's horrid. The poor guy." "I think it has to be connected," I said stubbornly. But I simply could not fathom what that link might be. "Did he look older to you?" I said. "The dead guy? Like a sugar daddy? Do you reckon he might be who Lily was meeting that night?" "And then what?" said Allegra. "He fell in, she ran off. She'd have stuck around and tried to help him." "I don't think he was the sugar daddy," said Jasper thoughtfully. "He looked only in his mid-20s. I had thought so too, though the concrete had been covering up a lot of his face. I sighed. There went my theory. "So neither of you know who that guy is?" I asked. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure," said Allegra, "but I'm not going back there to take another look." "Me too," said Jasper. "That poor dude. I wonder how long he's been under there." "Can't have been too long, by the looks of it," I said. "Maybe a few days. How long do they wait for concrete to set before they put tiles on anyway?" "If it was only a few days, then that matches with Lily," said Allegra. "You said that she must have died late on Wednesday night or in the early hours of Thursday morning. That's around the same time maybe that this guy died." An idea popped into my head and I blurted it out. Even if he's not Sugar Daddy, she could still have been meeting this guy after she got rid of Oberon, I said. And maybe Sugar Daddy caught them and got really angry and killed this guy and then killed Lily too. My voice trailed off because I had realised my theory didn't work. But then why didn't the killer also hide Lily's body under the concrete, said Jasper, which was exactly what I had been thinking. We stopped theorising because we heard the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs towards us. It sounded like several people. Chief Hardwick must have sent a team. I wasn't surprised when Agent Constantine came through the door. He saw the three of us and his mouth tightened a little. He looked frustrated at seeing me here again, and like he wanted to tell me off, but he bit his tongue. Maybe because the person who followed hot on his heels was none other than the vampire patriarch Oberon Malte Sr. himself. I stiffened and took a little step back. A vampire, an old one. I hadn't counted on this happening. Oberon Malte Sr. looked a lot like his son. Dark hair, green eyes, very handsome, though his face was a bit more lined. But where Oberon Jr. had a softer sweetness in his face and a twinkle in his eye, Oberon Sr.'s face was hard and sharp, all angles and darkness. Or maybe that was me imagining things, because he was a vampire after all. He looked in his mid-40s, but I knew he was older than that, much older by centuries. "I want these 3 people arrested," he snapped, his eyes hard on me and Allegra and Jasper. "They are trespassing on private property." To my immense relief, he did not spare me a second glance. He wasn't suspicious, thank goodness. "Easy there, Mr. Malte," said Jasper. "We got lost. This club should have better signage." I sniggered. I couldn't help it. There was definitely something wrong with me. That weird feeling was still surging through my bloodstream. Allegra gave me a sharp look, silently telling me to shut up. Oberon Malte Sr. had a lot of clout in this town, and the recent change of police chief put us Westbrims at a severe disadvantage. Oberon Sr. stalked over to the pool's edge angrily and stared down into it. "And did you happen to stumble into this pool and smash it by mistake?" he snapped at us. He was looking with disgust at the hole in the concrete. "You can add property damage to those charges, officer," he said coldly. "It was an accident," I said, deadpan. "I stumbled and fell in. You don't have any safety barriers." And then I giggled, even though I was trying really hard not to. "Sorry," I muttered, when I got a dirty look from Agent Constantine. "Well," snapped Oberon Sr., glaring at Agent Constantine as if he was failing to do his duty. "I'm not arresting anyone," he said. "Not until I've established the facts. And if it wasn't for these 3, none of us would know about that body under the concrete." The crime scene team who had come with him had already put on their white plastic suits. They were climbing into the pool and setting up lighting around it so that they could take a better look. The memory of the face inside the smashed concrete flashed in my mind, and I hastily looked away. I didn't need to see that again. Just then, a loud clattering came up the steps, and a very glamorous young woman stumbled through the doorway unsteadily. She looked barely 18. She was wearing a glittery gold-sheathed dress and matching glittering pumps that had very high stiletto heels. She tottered forwards a few steps towards us and looked around in confusion at the construction site, like she couldn't imagine what it was doing here. Then she gave a cry of joy when she saw Oberon Sr. "There you are, Sugar," she said. She spread her arms out towards him and tottered over as if expecting him to be glad to see her. But his face went even colder. He gestured to one of the 2 club security men who had come with him and were now standing guard at the door. "Get her out of here," he said. "How rude," I muttered, unable to help myself. He hadn't even bothered to ask her to leave nicely, as if she was a piece of meat. A security guard grabbed her by the arm and hustled her through the door. She cried out in dismay and looked worriedly back at Oberon Sr. "But Sugar," she wailed, "I thought we were going to party tonight." He didn't bother to reply. He had already turned his back on her and was looking down at the pool in disgust. Sugar, I thought. Lily's sugar daddy. It was Oberon Maltese Sr. "Hi, you've reached the end. Comment the code words, Sherlock Holmes would have solved it, to confuse everyone who hasn't reached this part of the story yet. And thank you for playing along."